or I have to bring this strategy in order to counter it.
You definitely have to respect it, but we've also seen players make pretty big reads when it comes to how they approach their game, which is maybe the Gastrodon doesn't come at all, and it's just that threat and team preview that's enough to be able to scare you away from some of those other choices, but sometimes you just gotta risk it for the biscuit. Wolfe in this very first game, leading with the Lunala and the Incineroar, and Andrew Ding on the other side have that Landorus and that Kyogre.
Covering for a Charizard lead pretty aggressively. You bring the Pokemon with Rock Slide or Stone Edge, and then you also bring the Kyogre to possibly change the weather back. You know, we don't get to see how Kyogre and Groudon face up against each other in terms of speed quite yet, unfortunately, but we do get to see some Intimidates thrown around, and we also get to see Andrew off to a pretty aggressive start here. Yes, that Incineroar can go for a fake out to flinch that Kyogre or that Landorus, but whichever one Wolfe decides to flinch, the other one is going to be dealing big damage, and that is not even beginning to talk about this Lunala. Like many other trainers with Lunala in the past, you run Power Herb plus Meteor Beam to boost your special attack, and I got good news for you, Rose. At least for this game one, it does look like Gastrodon is here on the field, ready to party.
I don't know if that's such good news for Andrew, but at least protecting the Kyogre for now. But Wolfe already opting to go for the Meteor Beam. You can see the Power Herb just going to fully charge that, but the Protect from Andrew is going to be able to stop that, and big damage coming in here from the Landorus as well, just to be able to break the Shadow Shield. That's pretty big.
Rock Tomb is a very interesting move for this Landorus, though. It gives Andrew a form of speed control that his team was really lacking, and now that Lunala is at -1 speed, I'm very curious if this Kyogre will be able to get an attack in first. Yes, Kyogre can't go for water type moves as long as the Gastrodon is on the field without boosting its special attack, but most Kyogre are running spread moves, which will still deal damage to that Lunala, and now that Shadow Shield is broken, it's possible that a double up into that spot is going to be enough for the knockout. But Wolfe, you know, maybe that special attack boost was all he was looking for to get things started, as it's time to Dynamax Lunala.
Dynamaxing Lunala right next to the Gastrodon as well. I mean, some of the biggest damage on Andrew's team is going to come from that Kyogre. And so Landorus, though, going for the U-turn into the Gastrodon, just trying to get some chip damage into that Pokemon. But Andrew now gets a chance to bring something in that might be a little bit more beneficial versus that Dynamax Lunala.
If he has it, the Incineroar with a Dark-type move, I think, would be the way to go here. You do have to worry about the max Rockfall, especially now that Lunala is at +1. The other nice thing about Dynamaxing this Lunala is that you no longer have to worry about the turn of charge for the Meteor Beam. But Rillaboom, the Pokemon of choice, a very great Pokemon to have against Gastrodon, and really threatens the immediate knockout of it unless Wolfe predicted this and targeted into that slot.
Well, Kyogre's going to go for the Water Spout anyway. That's another thing that players at this level don't fall into the trap of, which is, yeah, sure, you can go ahead and give over a Storm Drain boost to that Gastrodon, but sometimes the damage onto the partner is what matters more, and Kyogre is going to be able to hang on from that attack from the Lunala, but now Rillaboom is on the field to be able to deal with the Gastrodon. A Yawn coming through, though.
And if Gastrodon has Protect, as most of them do with Yawn, all you have to do is protect this turn, and then Grassy Glide, at least for now, is a thing of the past. So Wolfe just playing that very smart, I think. Yawn is an incredible move on Gastrodon in particular, as it allows you to sort of deal with these threats in a way that doesn't necessarily mean going for knockouts every single turn. Yawn also allows you to slow the play of the game down. You know, Andrew, if he doesn't want this Rillaboom to go to sleep, he has to switch it out. If he doesn't mind this Rillaboom going to sleep, then he's probably going to have it knocked out after another Max Phantasm. Kyogre as well, more than within knockout range from an attack from this Gastrodon the following turn. And really, with a Kyogre on the field with such little health and relying on Water Spout, you don't have to worry about removing it right away. You know, yes, Lunala needed that Dynamax in order to take that full health Water Spout, but Kyogre no longer at full health. no longer as big of a threat. Could still have other attacking moves, but I don't think they would necessarily constitute a knockout unless there was a way to get a little bit more damage down on the field.
Well, I can't imagine that's the Kyogre, except that it is. That's really risky.
It's incredibly risky.
Because that Kyogre is sitting at such low HP, but Andrew looks very confident in this as Gastrodon does go for the protect. So Rillaboom, fortunately not going to be able to attack into there, but does attack into the Lunala. And a Max Lightning, which is absolutely huge. It is going to be able to get the knockout into the Lunala. It changes the terrain as well. Rillaboom's not going to sleep this turn.
What an incredible play there from Andrew. If you think back to the beginning of this game, that Rock Tomb on the Lunala most likely made it so the Lunala was slower than the Kyogre, which opened the door for this play. You don't have to worry about being put to sleep when you're guaranteed the opportunity to set up Max Lightning. You do give up the priority present in the grassy terrain, but that's okay. You don't need it at this point. Really, all you want to do is switch this Rillaboom out, get your Intimidate user back on the field to threaten that Groudon, and just slowly start whittling away at this Gastrodon via Max Hailstorm.
Yeah. This is a great position for Andrew to find himself in, and this is exactly what it means to be a high-level VGC player, seeing opportunities like this to be able to carve out an advantage for yourself, because a lot of people would look at a low HP Pokemon and go, that's not a good Dynamax target, but it was the perfect play. We will see a switch from Wolfe to bring in that Incineroar. So -1 attack onto that physical Rillaboom, and a Precipice Blades from the Groudon will be enough to pick up the Kyogre. But Andrew got exactly what he needed to done with that Dynamax.
Exactly, and the Rillaboom hasn't attacked yet, which means Wood Hammer coming out does not connect with the Groudon, but great information for Wolfe as Wood Hammer onto Groudon, especially when grassy terrain is set up, and especially if this Rillaboom is holding one of those grass-type boosting items like we are seeing very popular in the metagame right now, would definitely threaten a knockout there. So really, I think forced to keep that Incineroar around for future games just to threaten the Intimidate to give this Groudon more of an opportunity to attack into that Rillaboom. But for now, staying on the field and revealing White Herb as its held item to get rid of the Intimidate. So again, great information for both these trainers. I believe we saw the White Herb reveal yesterday on stream from Wolfe. But, you know, good things to keep in mind. Now, if I'm in Andrew's shoes here, you know, I think that you have a very easy way to sort of make this matchup a little bit more easier for you and make these Intimidate switch. You have 2 Intimidate users. You have 2 Pokemon that have the ability to switch out, presumably via Parting Shot or via U-turn. It's time to just get that revolving door Pokemon going and force this Groudon to really not deal much damage at all, especially when Precipice Blades does not connect.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. There will be a Parting Shot onto the Landorus, and so that Incineroar will be switched out for the Gastrodon. But that Precipice Blades miss is definitely not helpful. The Throat Chop coming through to the Gastrodon as well, just to be able to continue to chip away.
The nice thing is that once the Rillaboom comes back out on the field and the electric terrain goes away, this Gastrodon will be free to go for Yawns once more. That could be something that Wolfe looks to in order to, you know, find a way out of this situation in Game 1. I think that Gastrodon also, if it's holding Ice Beam, you know, an Ice Beam into the Landorus would be a pretty strong play. If the Landorus is the Pokemon to switch out, it becomes a Rillaboom. You want to be hitting that for super effective damage, as I think Rillaboom is the scariest Pokemon that Andrew has to bring to the field right now. Yes, Landorus is scary too, but if it's running Earthquake as its ground type attack, it's going to really struggle to deal damage, as Incineroar is not known to carry Protect, and he's going to have to attack his own Pokemon. So he's in a very precarious situation here, and I think forced to keep U-turning as a result. It's not time for Earthquake quite yet.
No, I mean, we just saw the Groudon use Swords Dance also, so Andrew is absolutely prioritizing being able to get these Intimidate drops back onto that Groudon. But Rillaboom now in its place. Grassy Surge now active on the field. And Incineroar also using Parting Shot onto the Groudon. So this is pretty big. Andrew, in just that one turn, was able to mitigate that Swords Dance.
And that is something that Wolfe is going to have to keep in mind. Gastrodon has not attacked yet, and if Gastrodon went for Earth Power into that Incineroar spot, that could be a very unfortunate call for Wolfe. All Andrew really has to do is just keep these Intimidates cycling, and will be able to threaten Wolfe's really only damage output at this point in time. The bad thing about using Yawn in this situation is that the Landorus is going to want to switch out anyways. You have no way to stop it from switching out, and if anything, that means that Andrew gets yet another Intimidate on the field for this Groudon. And I don't necessarily see a downside to that. You know, Rillaboom able to attack first via Grassy Terrain and Grassy Glide at this point in time, going to threaten a knockout on Gastrodon. Landorus doesn't necessarily need to do any damage this turn. It could just U-turn again, get a little bit of chip down, get that Incineroar back in, and even if Incineroar is forced to take a Precipice Blades at that point in time, this is what, -2, -3 already? It's just, the Groudon's attack is going to keep going down, and Wolfe will be forced to either once bring out his own Incineroar and just try to keep that Groudon safe until Andrew is down to his last 2 Pokemon, or Groudon's just gonna be forced to attack and it's not gonna deal a lot of damage, and that's also a great opening for Andrew. So really just keeping incredible control of the board right now and really forcing Wolfe to only stick to one of 2 plays.
I think what's really tough too is that Rillaboom can really threaten either of these Pokemon. So Gastrodon doesn't want to stick around. We'll see the Incineroar now re-enter the field for Wolfe, trying to get these Intimidate drops as well onto Andrew's Pokemon, when that Rillaboom is really going to be one of the bigger physical threats on the team. Groudon also going for a Protect. So this is a really good position for Wolfie to get back into this game, but Andrew calls it, just going to go for the Grassy Glide into the Incineroar. Really hoping that was the Gastrodon, but damage is damage.
Damage is damage, and the Gastrodon is the bigger threat, I think, for Andrew at this point in time, given that it can hit all 3 of his Pokemon super effectively, and I think more importantly, it can keep forcing him to switch out with Yawns. That's not necessarily a bad thing, like I was saying previously, but it is going to slow the game down, and the slower the game is, the more likely it is that Groudon will get a critical hit, at which point Andrew is not in such a comfortable position. So you have to be very delicate here when you're playing this type of end game, because you have to sort of weigh your options. You know, Pokemon is essentially a game of risk at the end of the day, and if you're taking too many turns on the field, if you're giving your opponent, you know, 10 opportunities to get a critical hit, well, you know, it's more likely, because they're taking more attacks, that they will get a critical hit. That's just how statistics work. So you have to balance that risk with your own momentum and with keeping damage up on the field. For protecting Rillaboom here, for example, you know, you're keeping yourself safe from a Fire Punch, but you're giving Groudon the opportunity to land this Precipice Blades.
Oh,
I jinxed it.
Big miss.
Jinxed it.
Big miss onto Andrew's Incineroar. And yeah, that still kind of swings the door right back open, as this is still a big posture for position for both of these trainers. We've got 2 more turns of Grassy Terrain, so Rillaboom is definitely going to want to be able to reset that, especially in the face of something like a Gastrodon. It is still faster, but it doesn't hurt to have the option for a priority Grassy Glide, and then also just the increase in damage to its grass type attacks.
Exactly, and that Rillaboom does have to be extra careful. You know, yes, there was the fake out pressure on the field from Wolfe, but I think more importantly, either Incineroar or Groudon could have gone for a fire type attack there, and given that Rillaboom's already taken a decent amount of chip damage, you know, Flare Blitz most likely going to pick up a KO there. Depending on what fire type move this Groudon has, that could have also done big damage. So just keeping it safe and keeping it switching and keeping those Intimidates up, you know, again, very, very safe play here, but also very dangerous as well.
Well, that Protect on the Rillaboom was also really important because it ran out the last turn of Sun. So that was pretty good. But we are also going to see the Groudon go for the Rock Tomb. So Landorus is going to get its speed dropped, but a parting shot again from Andrew's Incineroar will send it back into its Pokeball and Rillaboom back out onto the field.
It's a revolving door of Pokemon.
It was going to happen at some point in the tournament.
It really was. And to be honest, I feel like a lot of times world champions are able to play these slow games. Wolfe going for the Flare Blitz, but getting the target wrong, doing a little bit of chip damage into that Landorus. It would have been incredible if he would have called the switch there into the Rillaboom, but still, you know, just slowly working towards this end game state. I am a little bit curious that this Groudon is still on the field and going for speed control now. Rock Tomb, you know, not the most common move on Groudon. Certainly something you could tech in if you are looking for a way to drop your opponent's speed. But still, you know, a lot of Groudon will opt for a Stone Edge or a Rock Slide or one of those rock type of moves with more attack. And, you know, we've actually seen this from both these trainers. Andrew seemingly opting for Rock Tomb of his own on the Landorus Therian. I don't think the speed is going to make too much of a difference at this point in time. You know, we're really just playing chip damage. Will Wolfe get a critical hit? You know, how these speeds will tie up once Grassy Terrain is gone. You know, we're going to be here for a few more turns. But it's still interesting to watch this play out, as still does a respectable amount of damage to that Incineroar at the end of the day.
Yeah, speed tiers are definitely getting a little funky, though. I mean, the Rillaboom has had its speed dropped, the Incineroar as well. The Landorus is also one stage slower. So there's a lot happening in this match for sure, but the fake out was pretty big to be able to land that damage without threat of that Incineroar going for something like a Flare Blitz into the Rillaboom and really threatening it. Groudon's still at full health, by the way.
Groudon's still at full health, and it's been intimidated a gazillion times, and it's interesting to me that Wolfe hasn't switched it out yet. You know, I think that sending the Gastrodon in here is just praying that your opponent goes for the Grassy Glide into your Groudon, but Landorus revealing its ground-type move of choice, going to deal
Earthquake.
Decent damage to both these Pokemon, also waiting out the Grassy Terrain.
Exactly, yeah, Grassy Terrain does cut the damage of Earthquake and a few other ground-type moves, select ground-type moves, but we're also starting to run out of time here. Andrew only has 48 seconds left of your time, and we're also getting close to the end of this game, so Andrew cannot afford to take too much time to think about this board state, but also you have to. It's a tricky one.
We just got the 3 minutes left timer as well. So some interesting timer mechanics to keep in mind as we're waiting for this game to play out. If Andrew runs out of your time, he loses. It doesn't matter what the board state is. You run out of your time, that's it. Game over. If the 3 minute or the overall game timer runs out, you look at knockouts, and then you look at the health remaining. And right now, Wolfe, with so much time left on the clock, he could run things down, but quite frankly, I don't think he has to anymore.
I don't think so either. Andrew, just like that, goes down to 4 seconds of your time left.
Man.
Incineroar, though, does get the Intimidate, so that is going to be a little bit, but the Earthquake as well. Wolfe, of course, having that Shuka Berry on that Incineroar. The Incineroar hangs on, so you don't even get the knockout, but the Grassy Glide, it does pick up the Gastrodon. That's pretty big, but there's still 2 minutes left in the overall match timer. Can Andrew get these commands in fast enough?
I don't know. I think you just mash A at this point and hope that whatever the first move is on these Pokemon is enough. I mean, a lot of times you see trainers optimize where their moves are in the move list so that if they run out of time, they click protect, for example. At this point in time, you just want to mash it, and it does look like Andrew hit 0 seconds. So if Wolfe is able to last for this turn, I think he wins.
Well, Incineroar comes back out, so big switch here. The Intimidate drops going on to Wolfe's Incineroar and the Groudon.
Did he protect, though?
Did he? No, it's going to be the Precipice Blades. Of course, that doesn't affect the Landorus, but also the Incineroar on Andrew's side has a Shuka Berry as well. Incineroar is not going to get knocked out here, but what did Wolfe do? Went for the Flare Blitz.
Sun boosted.
So it is sun boosted. Landorus still hangs on, but look at that. There's 56 seconds remaining. The Incineroar goes down too, but Landorus also goes for the U-turn.
My goodness.
It's still eating up time on the clock. So we've got the Groudon that has taken damage. Landorus goes back into its Pokeball, and I don't know how this Rillaboom has to come back out here. And it sets grassy terrain as well. Oh my goodness.
If Wolfie, or if Andrew just had one more second left on his time, I think he could just stall out the end of this game and win thanks to the Pokemon advantage. But his clock has already hit 0. We can see it. I think Wolf gets this. All he has to do is press A.
Oh my goodness.
Time has run out, the battle is over, and the winner is Wolf for game 1.
No
my
way.
goodness. Talk about a stressful match, man. I don't think I've ever seen your time and the match timer pop up like that.
No actual way. That's also only game 1.
I know. I know, that was only game 1, and I think you can see it on these players too. They're like, oh my goodness.
That was
game 1.
That was some absolute mental gymnastics that had to happen in that game number 1 to even be in a scenario where the timers played out that way. You had to take your time. You absolutely had to take your time as Andrew or Wolf in this matchup to be able to figure out what the best scenario was moving forward. You could see that both players were taking their time to figure out what was the end game position that they wanted. When could I get the pieces in place that I need to secure the knockouts and win the game?
I also have to wonder too if Wolf even recognized that Andrew's year time was up at that last turn. I feel like if you would have seen it and would have recognized it, you would just protect the Groudon that turn. I mean, we know Groudon has it. We've seen it revealed in that game. Like, you just protect and then the time's out and you win. So I think going into this game too, both of these trainers are going to be looking at the timer. I mean, there's no way you don't after such a crazy match like that. And I feel like that's going to change how things are played a little bit. You know, I think one thing that Andrew was doing pretty smartly was running down the clock towards the end of that game with all those switches and all those intimidates. It was just unfortunate that he didn't have the clock to run down. And that's just something that you have to pay attention to. You know, Wolfe Glick, I think historically, he's one of those trainers that has been very comfortable playing with the timer. You know, there have been so many times where I remember back at regional championships or like, you know, back on previous matches on stream, Wolf has been on playing and, you know, everybody else is done and Wolf is still there playing, and he's just something he's very comfortable with. And I loved how you used the phrase mental gymnastics, because that's exactly what it is. You know, it's just one other thing to juggle off of all these other possible win conditions. And I cannot wait to see how this is going to play out, because you gotta wonder if they're gonna take things slow again or if we're just gonna see them just, you know, go out of the gate.
Well, Gabby, the hard part's over, I think. You got to get through the team preview timer first. Make sure you don't time
one timer down. One timer down. Let's go.
Well, let's go ahead and get into this game 2 of this best of 3 series. This is still our second top 8 match. We've got Wolf that has the Lunala and the Incineroar, and Andrew with the Landorus and the Kyogre.
So a very similar lead for both these trainers from game 1. One thing we saw from Wolf that we've been seeing him do consistently is using Lunala's first turn on the field to go for that Meteor Beam and get that special attack boost. You know, I think he does have the protection of Fake Out on that Incineroar to try and stop the Kyogre's Water Spout from picking up a KO. Lunala still also has that Shadow Shield ability active, so I think if Wolf is planning on taking a similar strategy in this game that we saw from game 1, you go for that Meteor Beam, you know, maybe target down the Landorus, or if you're feeling like you want to get that chip damage in a little bit sooner, you know, have the Incineroar go for a Fake Out, grab a flinch, and then Dynamax that Lunala again. We saw Andrew wait until turn 2 to Dynamax the Kyogre in game 1.
Yeah, not waiting this time.
And I think that's the right call. You know, you want to get that max geyser damage down and hope that you don't catch a Gastrodon on the switch, which we already know. We've seen the Dynamax animation. Wolfe is not going to be switching Pokemon this turn.
Yeah, that's true. That would happen before the Kyogre Dynamaxes. So Kyogre might be able to get off some big damage. The fake out also goes into the Kyogre, so that's not going to be a fake out anymore on the field for Wolfe. But the Meteor Beam is still getting charged up from this Lunala. Power Herb, of course, making sure that that Meteor Beam is able to go this turn. But boy, oh boy, that Meteor Beam going into the Kyogre as well. Landorus getting a chance to U-turn, breaking the Shadow Shield on the Lunala. Now, big rotation here from Andrew to pivot into one of the Pokemon that are in the back, but also Kyogre in a very, very good position now as Rillaboom enters the field.
Kyogre could just go for the knockout on that Lunala. We saw how much damage the Water Spout did to Lunala once Shadow Shield was down. Max Geyser, base 150, going to deal tons, but Max Hailstorm afraid of that Gastrodon switching into the Lunala. Not enough to pick up that knockout. You just gotta respect the Gastrodon every single turn, because if you don't and Gastrodon switches in, especially now that you are Dynamaxed and you are forced to rely on single target moves, that switch in can be absolutely devastating.
This still puts Andrew in a very good position though. While that play was very safe, you got a lot of damage onto that Lunala. It becomes a less desirable Dynamax target, despite the fact that it did get that special attack boost from the Meteor Beam.
I think that Lunala's best bet at this point would be to go for an attack into the Rillaboom, quite frankly. You know, we saw this Rillaboom be such a consistent threat for Wolfe and such a problem when we hit that revolving door of Pokemon stage towards the end of game 1. If you're able to get that chip damage down this turn, or alternatively just call out the Rillaboom switching into that Landorus again and getting the chip down on that Pokemon, that's just less HP that Andrew has available to him when he starts playing the switcheroo game. You also have Groudon in the back, which is a good Dynamax target, but also switching it in on a Rillaboom and a Kyogre is quite the call from Wolfe.
All right, well, Wolfie's getting risky here too. I mean, the Lunala does still have that special attack boost, so it should be able to get some good damage off, especially because it's not affected by a Rock Tomb this time around, so that's also not a threat on the field. We also saw that Grassy Glide isn't enough to be able to knock it out, but also Andrew is going for a Protect on the Rillaboom as Lunala does go for the Max Phantasm. Good call from the Protect though. Rillaboom definitely able to survive that. And now Kyogre gets a chance to attack once again after these defense drops go through. And it's gonna be another Max Hailstorm. Where's it going? It's gonna go into the Lunala that did just Dynamax, so it will hang on.
It will hang on with enough HP to take the hail damage in between turns as well. Yes, grassy terrain is active on the field and will help heal it up, but the way the turn order works is you take damage first and then you get that health back. So Lunala just able to hang in there. A second Max Phantasm plus an attack from this Groudon would mean that there is a couple of knockouts in play.
But Rillaboom does have the grassy terrain.
It does.
So that Grassy Glide, we saw how much damage that was able to do in game number 1. Lunala is absolutely in knockout range.
But if you go for the Grassy Glide into the Lunala, you have the Groudon free to go for a Precipice Blades when both of your Pokemon are at -1 defense. And I think Lunala quite smartly calling that prediction and gets it right.
Yeah, Grassy Glide going into the Max Guard. Precipice Blades does connect onto both Pokemon, but the Max Geyser this time around, it's definitely connecting onto that Groudon, and that is a one-hit knockout.
Will allow Lunala to sit on the field for another turn and give Wolfe the opportunity to send in Incineroar with Fake Out to stop a second Grassy Glide. But still, Wolfe being forced to give up the Groudon that turn as a result. That's a very tough trade to make here as Kyogre, yes, it is within knockout range from a lot of different things on his team right now, but will possibly get one more attack in. And that's scary. You can't just ignore Kyogre like that. As long as it has Dynamax, it's going to be hitting those max geysers for base 150 attack. Doesn't have Dynamax anymore, but you know, could still be running Origin Pulse, could still be running tons of different moves here. So something that Wolfe has to be very careful about. I also find it interesting that he sent in the Incineroar instead of a Pokemon like Gastrodon.
Well, you talked about that though. Incineroar being able to pressure the fake out for sure, I think is going to be a really, really good benefit here. But maybe that means the Gastrodon.
That's what I was thinking.
Here.
That's what I was thinking. I mean, it's definitely a bit of a play. Like, I think, you know, if this Kyogre only has Water Spout, maybe you don't necessarily need the Gastrodon in this position, but it's something that you have to be thinking about if you're Andrew, because you need to figure out what your win condition is. And if you do still think it's Gastrodon and you're not ready to lose the Rillaboom, this is the switch you make.
Well, a fake out into the Incineroar that just switched in. Andrew has to sacrifice the Kyogre at this point. Now Lunala is still pretty fast. But the defense drop onto the Incineroar as well. Maybe that plays a role with the Incineroar on Wolfe's side, but Andrew does get a free switch here.
I think the defense drops, quite honestly, are better for the Groudon than the Incineroar, but you never know if we get into like a Flare Blitz versus Flare Blitz situation.
Yeah, unfortunately the Groudon's knocked out, so
yeah,
it's not going to be a factor in this game number 2. But the Landorus is going to be back out onto the field for Andrew. Dynamax is over for Wolfe.
Dynamax is over. Incineroar on Andrew's side of the field can go for fake out this turn. Cannot fake out Lunala as it is a ghost type Pokemon, which means a Moongeist Beam most likely going to be thrown in that Landorus's direction. You know, we are down to these last 3 Pokemon once again, and you know, it's possible that Andrew will go for a similar revolving door strategy, but we get the reveal of the Gastrodon on Wolfe's side of the field. It was indeed brought into this game, and Andrew missing the opportunity to send that Rillaboom back in.
The Throat Chop, though, goes into the Gastrodon. Just a nice bit of chip there. Wolfe, though, being able to stop that U-turn means that Rillaboom cannot come back in for free against this Gastrodon.
Yeah, and, you know, getting some chip down on that Gastrodon means it's even more likely that a Grassy Glide would be enough to pick up that KO in the future. So just things to keep in mind. There's a lot of thinking that's going on right now between these trainers. I mean, think back to game 1 when Andrew was down to these same 3 Pokemon. There was constantly Intimidate cycling. Not going to be as beneficial this time around, though. Lunala, special attacker, going to be faster. You know, Andrew just has to, you know, keep his win conditions in mind. Keep in mind the fact that the Rillaboom in particular is going to be incredibly valuable once it is able to make a second appearance on the field. But we'll have to contend with a Lunala and a Gastrodon that are more than capable of picking up the knockout on Landorus, at least this turn.
Yeah, that's very true. And Lunala is just overall a pretty fast Pokemon. So Lunala is going to go for the Moongeist Beam. It is going to be able to do some damage to this Landorus. Landorus does survive, goes for the Rock Tomb, able to drop that Lunala speed and actually just drop it completely. That is going to be a knockout. Wolfe now down both restricteds, left with the Gastrodon and the Incineroar. And with a parting shot onto the Gastrodon as well, that Rillaboom is going to come back in, and there's no grassy terrain active currently, so the Rillaboom will be able to reset that as it enters.
But if Wolfe called this and went for an Ice Beam into that Incineroar spot, that could be the game. Everything is coming down to the wire here. Also 2 turns of rain left on the field, at which point Flare Blitz becomes more of a threat.
That's the Landorus, though.
It's the Landorus. Fake out, still an option for Wolfe. There still are ways for this Gastrodon to not be afraid of this Rillaboom, but it's all coming down to predictions. It's all coming down to positioning. At least these 2 trainers can't switch anymore. So we're definitely entering the end phase of this game too. but it's going to be tough. Wolfe has to be able to find a way to get a knockout on this Rillaboom without losing the Gastrodon, and then he wins. And Andrew needs to find a way to knock out that Gastrodon and knock out Wolfe's Incineroar. It's a bit of a bigger ask, but both of these Incineroar are at full health, and it looks like Wolfe's Incineroar is going to be faster, at least, based off of the Intimidate activation. So, again, good things for these trainers to note.
Well, I think the play Andrew has to go for here is just protect the Rillaboom. I don't think you can risk at this point taking a fake out and getting knocked out by an Ice Beam from this Gastrodon, but Gastrodon has other tricks as well, where we have seen that Yawn as a part of its kit, but the Incineroar gets the fake out onto the Gastrodon, so
we're
I
just
think
trading fake out. Yeah.
Unless Wolfie didn't go for...
He did.
Yeah, so I think we're speed tied there.
I believe we are speed tied, so good information again. I think the biggest difference, though, is that this Gastrodon could still protect this turn, whereas Rain has stopped, and this Incineroar is more than capable of going for a Flare Blitz against this Rillaboom for the knockout. So it's true that Incineroar has been intimidated, but without the help of the Rain, and given the amount of chip damage on that Rillaboom, it's looking like Wolfe is going to be able to find a knockout here.
Rillaboom uses the Grassy Glide, but calls the Protect, goes into the Incineroar. So it's at least going to be able to do some damage here, but Wolfie's Incineroar is able to move first this time around. The Flare Blitz, oh my gosh! Oh! No way! That is a huge survival from the Rillaboom.
Oh my goodness! 1 HP.
And then the grassy terrain just to make sure it's going to hang on for this turn. That was a massive survival, maybe an invisible focus sash. We know that's not actually what it is, but absolutely nuts. That changes everything.
Gastrodon forced to rely on a double protect here unless Wolfie has trained this Gastrodon to take a single Grassy Glide after Rillaboom has been intimidated. It's a bit of an ask. You might even have to invest all of your stat training into your health and your defense at that point. It's a tough call. I mean, do you take the 30% chance of the double protect, or do you just go for it?
Gastrodon uses protect. It fails. So Rillaboom gets a chance to use the Grassy Glide. It connects into the Gastrodon, secures the one-hit knockout, and now it is going to be down to that Incineroar that is on Wolfie's side. But Andrew gets to move first. There's the Throat Chop, not going to be super effective, but it's the fire back of that Flare Blitz. Rillaboom does go down, but it took out that threat of the Gastrodon.
So this is where things get even more interesting, I think. We have Wolfe's Incineroar with a ton of chip damage already down on it. We have Andrew's Incineroar at full health. Both of these Incineroar are going to be relying on their non-Flare Blitz moves for the time being until they think they're within knockout range of a Flare Blitz. So we're going to be seeing quite a few Throat Chops thrown around, but
we're going to be here a while.
Quite frankly, it looks like Wolfe's Incineroar is going to be at a disadvantage, and unlike game one, both of these trainers have plenty of time left on the your time, and the nice thing about this board state is you just smash A, you just go to Throat Chop, you just hit it a few times. I mean, Incineroar is going to have to be down probably close to the red, if not already in the red, for this board state to play out. You know, I think Wolfe very smartly not forfeiting, you know, just trying to see if
maybe you can get a crit.
Exactly. You got to take this option. You know, you can't just forfeit as you're just losing immediately. This is also a great time for both of these trainers to start thinking about game three. There's not really much going on the board right now, so you can just look at your notes and start thinking to yourself like, man, what a crazy set this has been. How do I play this differently to come out on top in game three?
Yeah, Throat Chop after Throat Chop. This is a perfect time.
They're really going at it. Like these poor Incineroar are just like, you know, trading blows left and right.
Right hook here, a left hook there. It's yeah,
1-2,
1-2, 1-2 punch for sure. So at this point, it very much looks like Wolfie is out of this game too, bar any type of critical hit. But with that last Throat Chop, Andrew does put Wolfe's Incineroar in the red. And so looks to be pretty safe to be able to go for the Flare Blitz here. Throat Chop coming in from Wolfe's Incineroar. And it's going to be another Throat Chop here, just playing it safe, and I definitely respect that, bar any critical hits.
He does have time this time around, so you might as well use that. And really, I think it's very interesting to sort of see this. Oh, there's the crit.
Yeah,
There's
one. There's one.
All right. Well,
And this Throat Chop, though, from Andrew's Incineroar is going to knock out Wolfie's. So that is it here. Andrew tying up this series 1-1 in this best of 3.
what a crazy set. What a crazy set. What a crazy set. We got confirmation pretty assuredly through those last, 10 turns that these Incineroar are speed tied. So that's great information for us going into this game 3. But I think more importantly, you have to look at how Andrew adjusted to Wolfe's matchup in game 3 and sort of take that as your basis, because, you know, we saw him really have an advantage in both of these games. In game 1, really the only reason he lost was because of that timer. And now that he's aware of it, and now that he's most likely definitely thinking about it, I doubt that he'd let himself play down the clock that far. I think Wolfe is really going to have to change up his game plan as a result in this. You know, we've seen this Gastrodon try and do its best and really accomplish quite a lot in this game. But maybe it's time you leave it behind. We've seen Andrew lock into that Kyogre and Landorus lead 2 games in a row. Yes, Lunala as a lead is a fantastic Pokemon if you want to set up that Meteor Beam, if you want to get that special attack boost, but Andrew just showcasing that he's more than capable of dealing the big damage down onto the Lunala, regardless if it's coming from Max Geyser or not, to make Dynamax just not a viable option long term. Wolfe could decide to bring that Regieleki in place of the Gastrodon. It would be a bit of a read, but it would give him the opportunity to get some big damage down onto that Kyogre early, which is something that he seems like he's struggled to find in game 1 and game 2.
Even then, though, in game number 1, Andrew was not afraid to Dynamax that low HP Kyogre, recognizing that the value from that Max Lightning was well worth the use of the Dynamax. And even though it was only 1 turn, definitely got the job done. But it is time to enter into the final game of this top 8 series between Andrew Ding and Wolfe Glick. We will see what they have decided to do for their leads going into this 3rd and final game. Wolfie not straying away. That Incineroar and that Lunala are here to stay, and Andrew as well with the Landorus and the Kyogre. They're just matching each other.
But last time we saw Wolfe not opt to switch in that Gastrodon, instead keeping that Incineroar out on the field, and Lunala taking a lot of damage for it. I think that Andrew can take advantage of the fact that Lunala has to go for that Meteor Beam seemingly to get that attack boost before Wolfie is comfortable Dynamaxing it. And he's more than capable of going for a couple of attacks here. You break the Shadow Shield turn 1, and then you go for the big damage turn 2. I think Wolfie has to take that prediction to his advantage, but instead, Andrew with the Protect on the Kyogre. Wolfe calls it. Fake out into that Landorus, Meteor Beam, going to charge up, going to activate that Power Herb. My biggest question here, though, is did Wolfe target down that Kyogre like we saw in game 2, or is he going to throw that attack off into the Landorus?
Well, we're about to find out. Meteor Beam animation is going to start, so it will be into the Landorus, and so that is going to be some good damage here. Good call.
Unlike games 1 and games 2, this Lunala entering turn 2 with the special attack boost it wanted and with that Shadow Shield ability still active. If Wolfe decides to Dynamax it this turn, this is exactly the conditions that he was looking for. A Max Phantasm, possibly with the parting shot to send the Groudon onto the field, could be that synergy he's just looking for. Honestly, Max Phantasm definitely in range to knock out that Landorus. If he's able to catch in the Rillaboom on the switch like we saw in some previous games, that's going to be great as well. But no parting shot from Wolfe, sending in the Gastrodon this time.
Yeah, just a raw switch. The Lunala going to be Dynamaxed here. Same game plan as games 1 and 2, but this time, yeah, that Shadow Shield very much intact. going to keep that Lunala extra safe as it gets ready to use its Dynamax turns. But what did Andrew do in response? Maybe expecting that Lunala going to be coming onto the field. It's like another Dynamax here.
And I believe that's going to be the Kyogre again. So, Max Hailstorm, probably the best move of choice right now. If Andrew did not call that, though, as again in Game 2, the Gastrodon waited to make a fashionably late appearance. This could be a huge turn for Wolfe.
Max Phantasm from the Lunala does knock out Andrew's Landorus. Fence drop as well. Maybe that Groudon is going to be in the back, but it is the Max Hailstorm.
He called it.
Good call, very safe. Just knowing that Gastrodon is a huge threat does take it below half health.
It's so great having that amount of chip damage on the Gastrodon as well, because that means you really just need one more attack from any of your Pokemon in order to take it out. The residual damage from Max Hailstorm will also break the Shadow Shield, which means this Lunala is that much more vulnerable to an attack. Now, Wolfe could switch out the Gastrodon, send in that Incineroar to take another attack and possibly intimidate a Pokemon like Rillaboom if that's what Andrew is going to be sending out onto the field at this point in time. But at this other time, you might not need to worry about this. I mean, you have your Lunala with that special attack boost, you have the Dynamax still there, and even though you don't have Shadow Shield active, you do have enough health to take one attack from this Kyogre. You could just decide to protect your Gastrodon and go for a attack into the Rillaboom just to get it off the field. But Andrew, trying to keep that Kyogre, trying to keep both of his Pokemon safe, just stalling out the Dynamax, taking his time, something he's very comfortable with now.
Max Phantasm does go through Rillaboom's Protect, continuing to drop the defense of both the Rillaboom, and at this point, the Kyogre is at -2. But the Gastrodon didn't Protect, so you will see the Yawn go into the Max Guard of the Kyogre, but this is pretty good information for Andrew as well. That might be telegraphed for next turn, that Wolfe is still prioritizing using Yawn on Gastrodon.
It could have also been Wolfe trying to force Kyogre's third turn of Dynamax to be that Max Lightning like we saw in Game 1. Max Lightning is not going to do a lot of damage to the Lunala compared to a Max Hailstorm at this point in time, and really Gastrodon on the field is enough to get rid of the threat of a Max Geyser as well. So a good play there, I think, just covering his options. The double Protect from Andrew, though, just a nice way to slow things down. The one thing I worry about for Andrew, though, is if he keeps playing things slow and keeps this Kyogre on the field, once Groudon comes in, Groudon's Precipice Blades is going to be more than capable of picking up a knockout on a non-Dynamaxed -2 defense Kyogre, regardless of how many Intimidates there are. And really, Andrew's lost one of his Intimidate users, so he's not going to be able to pivot as easily as we saw in that Game 1.
Ooh, well, Max Rockfall here from the Lunala.
Into the Incineroar!
What a huge
picks
call.
up the knockout!
That is a huge call from Wolfe. That Incineroar and that Landorus are now both down. Both Intimidate users are off the field. If that Groudon is in the back, then Kyogre also can't switch out anymore for the defense drops.
And Kyogre also forced to use Max Lightning, just afraid of those yawns coming out from Gastrodon. Wolfe making an incredible read that turn, and yes, Kyogre is not going to be put to sleep, but more importantly, this just opens the door for Wolfe to intimidate that Rillaboom, to use the Lunala to knock out the Rillaboom, and then have this Groudon come in and target down this Kyogre. Because Andrew is down to his last two Pokemon, he is going to be forced to keep Rillaboom and Kyogre on the field, and they're going to be stuck with whatever stat drops they have.
Yeah, at this point, -2 defense on the Kyogre. So that's a big defense drop that Andrew cannot reset. And you also can't reset the weather because Kyogre's stuck. Groudon wins that weather war.
You don't even have Dynamax available to you anymore, and even if you did, the Gastrodon on the field would mean that Max Geyser wouldn't happen anyways. You know, I love this adjustment from Wolfe because I think he recognized in Games 1 and Games 2, Andrew was comfortable playing slow. He liked to play the revolving door of Pokemon game. But if you just knock out the Pokemon quick enough, you can't switch, and that just gives you so much more flexibility.
Okay, well, we've got 2 protects on the field so far. Wolfie's Lunala and, of course, the Kyogre, but the Wood Hammer from the Rillaboom going into the Lunala's Protect, and now that's also a yawn into the protected Kyogre. A little bit of a mute turn for both of these players, but there is still more time on the clock.
We got plenty of time. I mean, both these players are sitting at 6 minutes of your time. We're nowhere near the 3-minute timer activating. You know, if there's one thing that we have here in Top Cut here in New Jersey, it's time. That being said, though, you know, I think that Andrew, it really does have to keep an eye, not so much on the clock, but on the sandstorm, on the grassy terrain. Wolfe, I think, plays to stall out the grassy terrain at this point. You know, again, we're making the assumption that Groudon is the last Pokemon on his team. You wait for Grassy Glide to run out, or Grassy Terrain to run out, you send in Groudon, you outspeed, you fire attack, you win. So just something that keep in mind. We haven't seen Groudon use a fire attack yet. Quite frankly, it's possible that he doesn't have one, but you still want to be moving first. And the one way you move first is no grassy terrain.
For sure. I mean, Lunala is still going to be very, very fast, still has that special attack boost. Kyogre has to go for the Ice Beam here. It's going to go into Lunala. Still not enough to knock it out.
After Sandstorm could be knocked out by a Grassy Glide, but smartly switching in that Incineroar, so Fake Out is present, so that's no longer a concern. Wolfe could go for Fake Out into this Rillaboom, plus another Moongeist Beam, just knock out that Kyogre, and then all of a sudden you double down into the Rillaboom. Flare Blitz more than capable of picking up this knockout, especially since, unlike in previous games, this Incineroar has not been intimidated at all. So again, incredible playstyle adjustments from Wolfe, just going very
and that's it.
Aggressive.
That's the forfeit coming through. Andrew doesn't see a way out, and Wolfe takes this best